In 2023, in Germany, there was a proposal for a brand new citizenship law that is meant to amend the requirements to apply for a citizenship in Germany. This law led to a lot of headlines, and people were under the impression that it was a done deal. However, the law has not yet passed. Oh boy! We recorded this video on the 3rd of January and had scheduled it for today. 3 days before today, the German government has passed this law, which is amazing. However, it's a little bit sooner than we anticipated. So we will be amending sections of this video. The purpose of this video is to showcase how laws are made in Germany, and we take the dual citizenship law as an example. So just be prepared for a few corrections along the way. Anyways, continuing with the video. Laws in Germany have a very strict process that they need to go through to be approved. In this video, we're going to explore how laws are created, who needs to approve them, and what's the deal with this new citizenship law. Let's first introduce the players. There are 4 key players that are necessary to be able to introduce, pass, and apply a new law in Germany.
Correct. And those 4 players are, number 1, the Bundesregierung, meaning the current government, which consists of the Chancellor and the 16 prime ministers. This is the executive body.
Next player is the Bundesrat, which is the Federal Council, or in other words, the upper house of parliament. And this is formed by representatives of the 16 states in Germany.
Next up is the Bundestag, which is the federal parliament, also referred to as the lower house. It is the legislative body, and it is actually the only political organ that is directly voted by the people. This is, for example, why our big election every 4 years is called Bundestagswahl, because we are electing directly the Bundestag, the federal parliament.
And next we have the Bundespräsident, which is the federal president. Now let's jump into the 7 steps in creating and passing new laws in Germany.
Let's start with step 1, which is the suggestion of a new law. There's 3 ways a new law can be suggested or proposed. Either by the Bundesregierung,
so the current government,
by members of the parliament, and there needs to be a minimum 5% of members agreeing and kind of like supporting that new suggested law.
That's the Bundestag.
Or by the Federal Council,
which is the Bundesrat.
In most cases, the current government, so the Bundesregierung, suggests new laws by drafting a bill. This would happen in form of 1 ministry or 1 prime minister leading such bill. In our example of the proposed citizenship law, this would be led by the Federal Ministry of the Interior, and the Prime Minister currently for that ministry is Nancy Faeser.
The bill for the new citizenship law was proposed on the 19th of May of 2023. Step number 2. Once the bill is created, it needs to be approved by the current government, aka the Bundesregierung.
In our example, this was done on the 23rd of August 2023, so approximately 3 months after the proposed bill.
Step number 3 is that the bill needs to be passed to the Bundesrat,
aka the representatives of the German federal states. In this step, the Bundesrat typically gives a written statement, eine Stellungnahme, about the bill. And in our example, the Bundesrat made suggestions on the wording of who to exclude from being eligible for German citizenship.
In the example of the new citizenship law, this step was finished on the 20th of October of 2023.
The Stellungnahme, the written statement of the Bundesrat, gets sent to the Bundesregierung. Mind you, all of this is of course in writing by postal mail.
Maybe by fax also.
So it gets sent to the Bundesregierung, who then again needs to agree, if they want to continue, with their statement, which they did in this case.
Step number 4 is that all the documents are compiled. This includes the bill, the statement from the Bundesrat, the acceptance of the Bundesregierung, and all of this gets sent to the Bundestag, which is the current parliament.
At the Bundestag, the proposed bill gets debated in 3 different readings. To give you an idea of how the Bundestag, the parliament, works in Germany, it is set on a very fixed schedule per year. If you're interested in the schedule, we'll link it below, and the pink lines in the calendar for 2024 indicate the sessions that the parliament will be meeting and will be debating. In total, there need to be minimum 20 sessions per year, and 1 session is approximately 1 week, meaning they don't debate the entire year. It's really scheduled.
For a new proposed law or a bill to be debated, it needs to be in the agenda. However, not just because it's in the agenda, it means that it will be read. This is due to the fact that maybe there are other elements beforehand that need to be discussed that might take longer than the time that they have, so it could be pushed to next session.
For example, in our example, the first reading of this draft for the citizenship law was already scheduled at the beginning of November on the daily agenda of the Parliament. However, it didn't get the chance to be read, and it was pushed to the 30th of November of 2023, where it had its first reading. During the first reading, it is usually a very interactive debate and argumentation and pros and cons and different opinions that are being discussed on this proposed bill. It is typically followed by further consultations and adaptations led by expert committees of each political party that is part of the Parliament. At the time of recording, which is the beginning of 2024, our example, the proposed new citizenship law, is at this stage of its process, meaning it had its first reading, there were quite a few disagreements, and the political parties are now in the process of alignment, meaning of debating outside of Parliament. The goal here is to reach to an agreement, a compromise, which can then be presented in the second reading.
So in this case, if we take the example of the new citizenship law, once the different parties come to an agreement, it can be presented in the second reading, which again needs to be scheduled in the agenda for it to be discussed. In the second reading, again, the same process can happen where there's debates, questions, disagreements.
Changes that are asked for, yeah.
However, if the second reading is accepted, then it can be combined directly with the third reading, which is directly to vote for the new law.
Yeah, well, to be honest, if there are proposed changes in the second reading, and all the members of the Parliament present on that day, if 2/3 of them agree on the spot with those changes, then the third reading, which is the voting of the proposed law, can happen immediately. If less than 2/3 agree on the proposed changes in the second reading, the third reading will be scheduled on a different date.
Thanks. Just to be clear, the third reading, usually it's the voting of the bill. So there are only two chances, a first and the second reading, for the Parliament to debate and request changes and so on, right?
As we just described in our example of the new citizenship law, the second and third reading actually took place 3 days before launching the video on the 19th of January. They happened in the same session because there was an agreement and the vote was in favor of the new law. Hence, we can say it actually passed. However, it is not in effect yet, and the next steps that we're going to describe still need to happen for this law to take effect.
Step number 5. If the majority of the Bundestag approves the new bill, then it gets sent back to the Bundesrat for a final approval.
Correct. In this state of the process, we need to make a big distinction because there's two different types of laws in Germany. Let's stick to our example first and evaluate the other type of law at the end of the video. In our example of the proposed new citizenship law, the Bundesrat does not need to give its final approval. That is because the law is a so-called Einspruchsgesetz, which means it's a statute not needing approval. The Bundesrat could still veto this law. However, the Bundestag could also overrule this veto. Hence, in this case, usually when the Bundestag gives its final approval, people consider the law to be passed.
And just because a law has been passed, it does not mean that it is in effect. We will talk about that at step number 7. But first, step number 6, and that is that the law needs to be sent to the Bundespräsident for another approval.
And step 6 is really just a cosmetic step. It's super important, but nothing really happened in it because what the job of the Bundespräsident is to review the new law, whether it respects the German constitution, which typically it always does, and then he signs the law. He does have a veto right, however, it is really super rare that ever gets used. And very important as a final action and step is that the new and signed law gets published. The place where all the laws in Germany gets published is called the Bundesgesetzblatt, the Federal Law Gazette. Since it's a democracy, any law needs to be public. If it's not public, it is never going to become or get into effect.
We will leave the link to the website of the Bundesgesetzblatt, if I said that correctly, in the description of the video below. You can check there if the new citizenship law has been passed by the time we launched this video, or if you want to learn more about German law, you can definitely check that out. Now for the final step, which is step number 7, is for the law to take effect.
And for this to happen, it depends on what is written in the law. Typically, the law states a kind of like taking effect date. It could either say the day after publication, it could say 6 months after publication, whatever really is necessary for the German government to kind of like be ready for this new law to take effect. If there is no date listed in the law, then it automatically takes effect 14 days after its publication date.
In our research, we found that the German government estimates that the new citizenship law will pass in the first half of 2024. So let's see.
Let's stay tuned. Well, goal accomplished. The first half of the year turned into the first week that the government actually came together. So that is pretty awesome. The exact date on when the law will come into effect depends on how long steps 5, 6, and 7 that we just described will take. The law states that 3 months after its publication date, it will come into effect. It is estimated that it will take effect in April this year.
As Ivan mentioned before, there are 2 types of law. One that the Bundesrat needs to approve and one that it doesn't. So let's go into detail what happens if the Bundesrat actually needs to give an approval for a law to pass.
Such law would be called Zustimmungsgesetz, which pretty much means it's a law that needs approval. So first let's say, what are laws that need approval? Any law or change on a law that impacts the German constitution, the German basic law, as well as any law that has a direct impact on the financials and as well on the administrative responsibilities of the German federal states, so that impact the states directly. Those need to get approved by Bundesrat, which are the representatives of the state. It kind of makes sense. It's important to say that the Bundesrat cannot make any changes or suggest any changes to a law, unlike the Bundestag in its readings. However, the Bundesrat pretty much really just votes on we approve or we disapprove. If the Bundesrat disapproves with the new law, then they can call this a mediation committee, the so-called Vermittlungsausschuss. It is then the job of the mediation committee to find a compromise between the 2 houses that are disagreeing, between the Bundestag and the Bundesrat. The mediation committee is formed of 16 representatives of each house who debate and work together to find a solution on how this law can move on in its process. Once a compromise is found, then it gets presented again to the Bundestag, so again to the parliament, who get to vote again. If they vote again and pass it, then it gets sent back yet again to the Bundesrat, who again get another round of we agree or disagree.
Well, if they disagree at this round?
If they disagree at this round, the law is over and out.
Ah, okay. It's not like it goes over and
no,
over.
It's not gonna happen.
Okay.
And if they agree, then pretty much the law is passed and it goes on in its round to the Bundespräsident and so on.
Now, a few steps back, if the mediation committee kind of like is unsuccessful in finding a compromise between the people that are disagreeing and nothing comes to an agreement, then the law simply fails.
Yes.
And it's no longer discussed, and that was that.
In most cases, when the mediation committee gets called, there is a compromise that is found though.
Just to give you an idea of how many laws get passed per year, in the last 10 years, the average has been of 137 new laws that have been discussed in an estimate of 60 discussion days per year. So is that efficient? I don't know. Compared to what, right?
Yeah. No, it's just to give an estimate, right?
Yeah, to give an estimate.
Here at Simple Germany, we only discuss and record and publish videos on new laws that are actually passed and in effect. That is why you haven't heard us talk about this new citizenship law, because we don't know the final version yet or if it's actually going to come through. However, you did hear us talk about the new Immigration Act that we discussed in detail once it was passed. So if you do want to get notified once we release our version and our video of the new citizenship law once it's passed, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and also turn on the notification bell to be notified when we release new videos.
Until next time, cheers! It needs to be approved. It needs to get approved by the current government. So the bill.
Step 4.
Yeah, hold on, I'm practicing. Then it gets sent back to the Bundesregierung for final... Oh, to the Bundesrat. Oh, sorry. If the majority of the Bundesrat approves the new bill...
Bundestag.
Ah.
I know, it's so like, Bundestag, Bundesrat.
Let me do that again, please. Okay.
No.
No?
Just,
I'll do it again.
I can say, you mean when we publish this?
That's fine. I can do it again. Okay. Which website is this?
Like some German government website.
Okay. In some German government's website, according to the German government, they forecast for the new citizenship law to be passed. Why am I talking like this? There are two types of law. One that the